All right, another spark and another build. It's another day on the line. We walked the path of the primordials, the godlike forces before the forge. Before that, we faced the entropic horror of the Rustborn, and we began with the industrious, foundational guilds. We've seen order, chaos, and cosmic design. Today, we complete the circle.
Get ready to question what's real, because today, we are leaving the physical world behind. We're stepping into the dream space, into the echoing halls of memory itself. We are talking about the final faction, the Mythborn, the archetypal titans of belief and echo.
Now that sounds incredibly abstract, and it is. So before we dive into the deep end of that conceptual ocean, let's ground ourselves. For anyone new joining us, or for veterans who just love the simple elegance of it all, let's remember the core of how this game is played. It unfolds in 6 steps. The first is draw.
Simple. You draw a card from your deck, adding to your options.
Second, charge.
This is where you generate your weave, the energy you need to play your cards.
Third, you build.
Here you can play your structure cards to fortify your field, or tool cards to prepare for future actions.
Fourth, you act.
This is the heart of your turn, using Titan abilities, playing task cards, or unleashing powerful flux cards.
Fifth, you clash.
The combat phase. Your Titans can attack the opponent's Titans or their structures.
And finally, step 6 is end.
You resolve any end-of-turn effects and pass play to your opponent. Draw, charge, build, act, clash, end. 6 steps. 1 epic battle.
Remember that sequence. Hold on to that simple 6-step process. Because the Mythborn, the faction we're discussing today, they love to twist it, to bend it, to make you question which step you're even on.
They are a faction unlike any other. The guilds build, the Rustborn destroy, the primordials define. The Mythborn, however, they question.
So let's start with that fundamental question. Who or what are the Mythborn?
That's the perfect place to start, because they aren't beings in the traditional sense. The Mythborn are avatars of forgotten stories. They are half-truths that were never resolved, concepts that never fully solidified. They are the echoes of titans that might have existed, but never did.
Whoa. Okay, let's unpack that. So they're not flesh and steel? They're ghosts of memory? Dream-forged ideas? Like an urban legend that becomes so real, it can sit at the table with you.
That's a fantastic analogy. Think of them as paradoxical presences. They shouldn't be, but they are. The lore is intentionally hazy. Some texts suggest they might be the failed dreams of the primordials, discarded ideas from the dawn of time. Others believe they're collective illusions, born from centuries of myth and rumor whispered among the guilds.
So if enough people believe in a what-if scenario, that what-if can gain sentience and become a Mythborn Titan.
That's the operating theory. It leads to their most defining phrase. They aren't created, they are remembered into existence.
That's a heavy concept. So what do they represent on the game board? If they're not focused on building structures or breaking them, what is their purpose?
They represent the power of narrative itself, of echo, rumor, and unresolved archetypes. In gameplay terms, this translates to phase disruption, to dreamlike recursion and illusion-based mechanics. They weaponize ambiguity.
So they don't win with overwhelming strength. They win by making their opponent doubt everything they see. They aren't builders or destroyers. They are interferers, twisters, delayers, and vanishers.
Precisely. They mess with the fundamental expectations of the game. They are the living embodiment of the exception to the rule.
So where did this faction of living stories come from? When did they start to manifest?
The lore points to a period called the Echo Pulse Era. It was a time of severe weave instability across the world. And during this time, all these forgotten fragments, dreams, and failed Titan concepts started, re-echoing back into the physical world, like reality had a fever and was having memory flashes.
So they don't have a clear origin point on the timeline.
None. Their timeline is as slippery as their nature. Their arrival is always marked by misalignment, strange phenomena that warp the battlefield.
Misalignment. What does that look like in a match?
It can be subtle or overt, a corrupted draw phase, where a player draws a card they shouldn't, an unexpected phase skip, robbing an opponent of their clash phase, illusionary duplicates of Titans appearing on the field, forcing your opponent to guess which is real, or even bizarre dream events that temporarily change the rules for everyone.
It sounds like they don't have a home base or a central forge like the guilds. Where do they even dwell?
They don't dwell. They haunt. Their influence is strongest in places where reality is thin, places the guilds mark on their maps with a question mark, locations like Echo Wells, which are ancient pools of residual weave memory.
And I see here in the notes, the Dreaming Forge. That sounds like their capital city.
It's less of a city and more of a metaphysical concept, a shared dream space tied to belief, possibility, and pure potential. They also occupy what are called phase shadows. These are the liminal zones between the phases of a turn, the literal cracks in the game's structure.
Okay, this is all fascinating from a lore perspective, but let's get down to brass tacks. Why do they matter for players? Why would I choose to play this faction of ghosts and rumors?
Because they are the ultimate wild card, the agents of dissonance, memory, and recursion. They matter because they allow for deck archetypes that don't rely on traditional strategies. You don't need the fastest damage or the strongest walls. You can win by rewriting the rules mid-game.
So they're for the player who wants to play mind games, not just cards. The poker player who loves a good bluff.
The ultimate mind game. They function as the great balancer in the meta. If a certain deck becomes too dominant, too reliant on a predictable ABC strategy, the Mythborn are uniquely equipped to counter it, not by overpowering it, but by tangling its logic in knots. They bend the system without breaking it.
All right, let's get into that system. How do they actually play? What are the core mechanics that make a Mythborn deck feel so different?
It starts with one of their signature systems, EchoForms. These are cards or abilities that can echo previous actions, even actions from turns ago, or from cards that are already in the junkyard.
So it's not just bringing a card back from the discard pile. It's the ghost of that card's action that comes back to haunt the field. If I played a Flux card that dealt 3 damage on turn 2, an EchoForm might let me repeat that 3 damage on turn 6 without the original card.
A perfect example. It forces your opponent to remember the entire history of the game, not just the current board state. Then you have the fade mechanics. This is where things get really tricky for the opponent. Some Mythborn cards enter the field faded, meaning they are inert, maybe even invisible or face down, until a specific trigger condition is met. Only then do they reveal themselves and activate.
That's incredible. You might be staring at an empty field thinking you're safe. But in reality, you're walking into a perfectly laid trap. It's all about hidden information and psychological warfare.
And that hidden information is stored in illusion zones. These are temporary secret zones that can hold these unrevealed cards or delayed triggers. Your opponent doesn't know what's in them or when they'll go off. It could be a trap, a resource, or a complete bluff.
Which brings us to phase misalignment. This sounds like it fundamentally messes with that 6-step turn structure we talked about. And
It does. The Mythborn have cards that can literally activate out of phase. Imagine a common scenario. Your opponent has a powerful Titan with an ability that triggers when it attacks. They feel safe in their build and act phases. But a Mythborn card might trigger during their build phase, neutralizing that Titan before it ever gets a chance to declare an attack. It pulls the rug out from under them.
it's a constant battle against expectations. You think you know the sequence, but you don't.
And that's the beauty of it. No matter how much the Mythborn bend the rules, the core remains. Every Titan turn is still a framework of draw, charge, building act, clash, end.
6 steps. Infinite ways to forge your victory, or in the Mythborn's case, infinite ways to make your opponent forget what victory even looks like. So with a style this strange, there must be clear trade-offs. Let's talk strengths and weaknesses.
Their greatest strength is massive, subtle disruption. You can delay, reverse, or negate your opponent's core actions without using brute force. Your strategy is almost completely hidden, which makes you incredibly unpredictable.
But what's the flip side? What's the weakness?
The damage ceiling is very low. You will rarely win by attacking with huge titans. Your entire strategy is also extremely dependent on timing. If you mistime an echo or reveal a fated card too early, your entire setup can fizzle out, leaving you defenseless. It's a high-wire act.
And I imagine those illusion zones are fragile. If a Rustborn player just corrupts the whole zone or another Titan overwrites it, you lose all those hidden traps you spent turns setting up.
Exactly. It's a high-risk, high-reward playstyle. It's very hard to pilot correctly. It attracts a certain kind of player who enjoys prediction, patience, and elaborate traps.
So what do some of these fabled Titans actually look like? Let's talk about the Mythborn 8, the confirmed archetypes.
They are as strange and conceptual as the faction itself. Take Ascendra. Her archetype is the Echo of Ascension. She's the ghost of a forgotten path to victory, so her mechanics actually let her alter the win conditions of the game.
Wait, she can change how you win? So instead of reducing your opponent's health to 0, she might introduce a new win condition like win if you have no cards left in your deck.
Something exactly along those lines. It's not just bending the rules, it's writing a whole new final chapter for the match. Then there's Chronova, the broken clock dream. As the name suggests, Chronova manipulates time. Her cards create after-images of actions, so an effect might trigger and then trigger again 2 turns later, like a temporal echo.
So you're not just defending against what's happening now, but what happened in the past. That sounds incredibly difficult to play against. What about a more direct, interactive one?
That would be Gildara, the Shattered Oathkeeper. She is the echo of a forgotten alliance between the guilds, so her mechanics are all about synergy with other factions, creating secret, temporary alliances, and she uses bait loop illusions to trick opponents into attacking the wrong target.
Each of these characters feels less like a warrior and more like a living game mechanic.
That's the core narrative theme of the Mythborn. They are not from the world, but from the memory of it. They embody the question, what if imagination, what if a story became sentient?
In a campaign, they must be incredible. They could be anything: deception-based allies, mirror bosses that copy your own deck, or fragments of a legend you have to piece together to unlock a new power.
They are the ultimate storytellers in a game about building your own story. They represent potential, ambiguity, and the idea that some things are powerful not because they are real, but because they could be.
It's a faction that rewards creativity above all else. It's not about having the strongest card, but the most clever idea. A fitting and mind-bending end to our tour of the great factions of Tools and Titans.
From the grounded, pragmatic guilds to the conceptual, dream-forged Mythborn, the game truly spans the entire spectrum of creation.
It's a perfect reminder that no matter how complex or strange the strategy gets, it all comes back to that same elegant foundation.
In every match of Tools and Titans, your tradecraft unfolds in 6 simple moves:
Draw, charge,
building, act,
clash, end.
simplicity for the novice, mastery for the Titan.